The iron shackles on the kennel gates had rusted through again. Arielle gripped the bolt cutters with both hands, her muscles screaming as she forced the blades through metal that should have been replaced years ago. The sound of snapping steel echoed across the empty yard, and 3 massive hounds immediately lunged against their cage doors, snarling. She did not flinch. She simply moved to the next gate, her hands steady despite the blood seeping through the bandages wrapped around her palms. The Alpha wanted the kennels ready for the visiting dignitaries arriving before the blessing ceremony. That meant 16 gates repaired, 60 feet of chain replaced, and every stone floor scrubbed clean before sunset. They had given her no tools except what she could scavenge, no help except her own 2 hands. She had started before dawn. The sun now hung directly overhead. Still playing the martyr, Arielle? The voice slithered across her concentration like oil on water. Arielle finished cutting through the bolt before she turned, letting the ruined shackle clatter to the ground. Brenna Holofer stood at the edge of the kennels, immaculate in her ceremonial leathers, her dark hair braided with silver thread that caught the light. Behind her, Jackson Reedwood filled the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest, his expression bored. "The Alpha wants this finished by sundown," Arielle said quietly, turning back to her work. "The Alpha wants a lot of things." Brenna stepped closer, her boots barely touching the filth that covered the ground. "But what he will get tomorrow night is a pack finally free of its most embarrassing burden." Arielle's hands tightened on the bolt cutters. She kept her eyes on the gate. "You know what I love most about the blessing ceremony?" Brenna's voice dropped to something almost intimate. "It's the finality of it. No more questions. No more whispers about bloodlines or legacies. Just you, on your knees, accepting what you have always been. A servant," Jackson added, his voice like gravel. "Property." Arielle felt the heat crawl up her spine, but she forced her breathing to stay even. She had survived worse than their words. She would survive this. "Nothing to say?" Brenna circled closer, her smile sharpening. "How disappointing. I was hoping for one last display of that pathetic pride your father filled your head with." The mention of her father cracked something inside Arielle's chest, but she swallowed it down. She picked up the chain and began threading it through the new gate lock, her movements mechanical, her face blank. Brenna's expression soured. "You bore me." She turned on her heel and walked away, Jackson following like a shadow. "Finish your work, servant. Tomorrow, you will have a new mark to wear." Arielle waited until their footsteps faded completely before she let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up. She set down the chain and pressed her palms against the cold stone wall, willing her pulse to slow. She could not break. Not now. Not when she was so close. When the moon rose and the pack house finally fell silent, Arielle slipped through the side entrance reserved for servants. Her feet knew the path by memory down the corridor, past the kitchens, through the narrow door hidden behind the tapestry of the first Alpha. The old records room was supposed to be sealed, but the lock had been broken for years, and no one except Arielle seemed to remember it existed. She lit a candle and pulled the leather-bound ledger from its place on the 3rd shelf. Her father's name was there, written in ink that had faded to brown. Arielle Fenwick, bloodline traced to the Silver Ridge Pack, Northern Territories, allied with Holofer, under the Treaty of... The page had been torn, deliberately, cleanly, but in the margin, in handwriting she did not recognize, someone had scratched a single word. Queen. Tamsin Firewood moved through the Alpha's study like smoke, her presence barely noticed until she wanted it to be. Arielle pressed herself flatter against the wall outside the door, the serving tray in her hands forgotten. She had been sent to deliver the Alpha's evening meal, but the voices inside had stopped her cold. The ceremony must be flawless. Tamsin's voice was honey and steel. The pack needs to see strength, unity. Brenna is the future of Holofer. She should lead the blessing rites. "Brenna is too young," the Alpha began. "Brenna is your heir. And the pack is watching, Aldrich. They see weakness when you hesitate. They see doubt." Tamsin paused, and Arielle could almost see the calculated tilt of her head. "Give her this moment. Let her prove herself. Unless you want them whispering that the Holofer line has gone soft." The silence that followed was heavy. Then the Alpha's voice, defeated. "Fine. Brenna will conduct the ceremony. But Tamsin, if this goes wrong..." "It won't." Tamsin's footsteps moved toward the door. "Trust me." Arielle barely had time to slip into the adjacent corridor before Tamsin emerged, her expression serene, her eyes cold and satisfied. She did not even glance in Arielle's direction as she glided past. Arielle waited, her pulse hammering, before approaching the study door. She knocked softly and entered, setting the tray on the Alpha's desk. He sat with his head in his hands, looking older than she had ever seen him. "Is there anything else, Alpha?" she asked quietly. He looked up, his eyes unfocused, as if seeing through her. "No, leave." But before she could move, the door burst open. A scout stumbled in, his face pale, his breathing ragged. "Alpha, the King's Guard has been spotted, 3 miles from our northern border." The Alpha's face went white. "Rowan Silvercrest? Here? Are you certain?" The banners are unmistakable. They are moving slowly, as if searching for something, or someone. The Alpha stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. "Send word to the council. Double the patrols. If the Lycan King is hunting a dark magic user in our territory and finds one here, he will burn us all." Arielle's blood ran cold. The Lycan King, the most powerful wolf in the world. "Here. Get out!" the Alpha snapped at her, his panic bleeding into rage. "Now." She fled. The corridors blurred as Arielle ran, her mind spinning. The king, dark magic, the torn page in the records room, the word queen written in the margin. None of it made sense, but something deep inside her chest tightened with a feeling she could not name. She found herself in the old chapel, a crumbling stone room at the edge of the pack house that no one used anymore. She sank onto the cold floor, trying to breathe, trying to think. Her hand brushed against something wedged between the stones. Metal, cold. Arielle pried it loose. A silver locket, tarnished with age, fell into her palm. The moment her fingers closed around it, warmth flooded through her skin, spreading up her arm like liquid fire. The locket pulsed, once, twice, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single engraving, a wolf crowned with silver stars, and beneath it, a name she did not recognize. Silvercrest. The great hall was packed to suffocating. Every member of the Hollowfur pack had been summoned, their bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, their faces turned toward the raised platform where Alpha Aldrich stood beside his heir. Arielle stood at the very back, half hidden behind a stone pillar, the silver locket burning against her skin beneath her threadbare shirt. "Tonight," the Alpha's voice boomed across the hall, "we gather to honor tradition, to celebrate the bonds that make us strong, and to cleanse our pack of that which weakens us." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Arielle felt their eyes sliding toward her, hungry and eager. Brenna stepped forward, resplendent in crimson ceremonial robes that made her look like a queen already. Her smile was radiant, terrible. "Tomorrow night, at the blessing ceremony, we will witness a reckoning that has been too long delayed. Arielle Fenwick will stand before this pack and renounce any claim to our bloodline. She will speak the words of submission, and she will receive the mark of permanent servitude." The hall erupted. Some cheered. Others whispered excitedly to their neighbors. A few looked uncomfortable, but they said nothing. They never did. "She will kneel," Brenna continued, her voice rising above the noise, "and she will accept what she has always been. A servant. A mistake. A burden finally lifted from our shoulders." Arielle's vision tunneled. The walls pressed in. The air turned thick and suffocating. She could not breathe, could not think. This was it. This was the end of everything. The locket pulsed against her chest. Frantic now, as if it could feel her terror, she turned and pushed through the crowd, ignoring the muttered curses and shoves, her only thought to get out, to run, to disappear into the forest and never come back. The pack could have their ceremony without her. They could have everything. She just needed to survive. The night air hit her like a slap when she burst through the side door. She ran toward the tree line, her lungs screaming, her legs burning. Just a little farther, just a few more steps and she would be gone. A hand closed around her arm like a vice. Jackson Reedwood spun her around, slamming her back against a tree hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. His face was inches from hers, his breath hot and rank. "Where do you think you're going?" Arielle thrashed, but his grip only tightened. "Let me go." "Let you go?" Jackson laughed, low and cruel. "You really think you can run from this? From us? You belong to this pack, Arielle. You belong to Brenna, and tomorrow night, everyone will see exactly what you are." "I am not. You are nothing." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt worse than shouting. "You think your father's name protects you?" He was weak. He was a fool, and he died like one. Just like you will if you try this again. He released her suddenly, and she collapsed to her knees in the dirt. Jackson stood over her, his expression twisted with disgust. Go back to your quarters. Stay there. And tomorrow, you will do exactly as Brenna commands, or I will make sure your death is slow enough that you beg for the mercy of that brand. He walked away, his footsteps heavy and deliberate, leaving her alone in the dark. Arielle stayed on her knees, her hands pressed into the cold earth, her body shaking so violently she thought she might break apart. She had tried. She had tried to run, and she had failed, just like she failed at everything. The locket pulsed one more time, weak now, as if even it had given up hope. She pulled it from beneath her shirt and stared at the engraving through her tears. The crowned wolf. The name Silvercrest. What did it mean? Why did she have it? And why, even now, when everything was lost, did it still feel warm against her palm? She did not have answers. She only had tomorrow. And tomorrow, she would kneel. The king's guard arrived at dawn, unannounced and unwelcome. Arielle heard the commotion from the servants' quarters, the pounding of fists on the main gate, the shouting, the frantic scramble of pack warriors rushing to attention. She pressed herself against the wall near the kitchen entrance and watched as 3 riders in black and silver crossed the threshold. They moved like predators, like death-given form. The lead guard dismounted with fluid grace, his face hidden beneath a hood, his hand resting on the pommel of a sword that gleamed even in the dim morning light. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of authority that made Alpha Aldrich look like a child playing at leadership. We require lodging, food, and information on any dark magic users operating in this territory. The Alpha's face drained of color. Of course, anything the king requires. The king requires honesty, the guard's tone sharpened, and cooperation. We will be here until our investigation is complete. Tamsin appeared at the Alpha's side, her expression carefully neutral. But Arielle saw the tension in her shoulders. We are honored by your presence. Our pack house is yours. The guard did not acknowledge her. His attention had already moved past the Alpha, past Tamsin, sweeping across the gathered pack members with cold calculation. And then, inexplicably, his gaze stopped. On Arielle, she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. For one impossible moment, she felt seen in a way she had never been seen before, not with contempt or pity, but with recognition. As if he knew her, as if he had been searching for her. The guard held her eyes for 3 heartbeats. Then he turned away, dismissing her as quickly as he had found her. But Arielle's hands were shaking. The locket beneath her shirt pulsed with heat so intense it nearly burned. By midday, the pack house had descended into chaos. The ceremony preparations had been thrown into disarray by the guard's presence. Brenna was furious, snapping at servants and slamming doors. The Alpha locked himself in his study, refusing to see anyone, and Arielle had been assigned to serve the king's guard directly. She carried a tray of food to the guest quarters, her steps careful, her head down. The guard who had stared at her earlier sat by the window, his hood finally lowered. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 30, with sharp features and eyes the color of storm clouds. He watched her set down the tray, watched her pour the wine, watched her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. You are Arielle Fenwick, he said. Not a question. A statement. She froze, her hand still on the wine decanter. Yes. Interesting. She did not know what to say to that. She simply nodded and moved toward the door. The ceremony tomorrow. His voice stopped her. You should not go. Arielle turned slowly. I have no choice. Everyone has a choice. He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Even when it does not feel that way. Before she could respond, he dismissed her with a wave of his hand. She fled. That night, while turning down the linens in the empty guest rooms, Arielle found the note tucked beneath a pillow. The handwriting was elegant, precise. Do not kneel. Do not accept the brand. The king is closer than you think. Her hands trembled as she read it again. And again. The king is closer than you think. What did that mean? Was he already here? Was he coming? And why would he care about a servant girl about to be marked as property? She folded the note and pressed it against her chest, next to the locket that would not stop burning. Tomorrow, she would have her answer. The morning of the ceremony arrived with a silence that felt like a held breath. Arielle woke to find the pack house transformed. Silver banners hung from every beam, candles lined the corridors, and the great hall had been prepared like an altar for sacrifice. Her sacrifice. She moved through her chores like a ghost, invisible to everyone except when they needed something fetched or cleaned. The Alpha passed her 3 times in the corridor without even a glance, his attention fixed entirely on the king's guard, his voice obsequious and desperate, as he assured them that the ceremony would proceed without incident. Brenna held court in the main hall, surrounded by admirers, her laughter bright and cruel. She caught Arielle's eye once and smiled, the kind of smile that promised pain. By midday, Arielle could not take it anymore. The note burned in her pocket. The locket burned against her skin, and the certainty of what was coming, the kneeling, the brand, the words of renunciation pressed down on her until she thought her bones would crack. She found the Alpha alone in his study, reviewing papers for the ceremony. She knocked, her knuckles barely making a sound against the heavy door. "What?" His voice was sharp with irritation. She pushed the door open. "Alpha, please, I need to speak with you." He did not look up. "I have nothing to say to you, Arielle. Please." She stepped inside, her voice breaking despite her best efforts. "Do not let Brenna do this. I am your pack. My father served you faithfully. I have never asked you for anything, but I am asking now. Please." The Alpha finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than hatred. It was indifference. Cold, empty indifference. Your father was weak. He made promises he could not keep, and alliances that brought us nothing but trouble. And you, he set down his papers with deliberate care. You are the last remnant of a mistake I should have corrected years ago. I have done everything you asked. I have endured. You have been a burden. He stood, his expression hardening. A constant reminder of obligations I never wanted. But after tonight, that burden will be lifted. You will be marked, you will accept your place, and I will finally be free of you. Arielle felt something inside her chest collapse. You are going to let her brand me. I am going to let her give you the only mercy you deserve, a purpose. He moved toward the door, forcing her to step back. You are a problem solved, Arielle. Nothing more. He left her standing in the empty study, her vision blurring, her body numb. She had known, somewhere deep down, that he would not help her, but hearing it spoken aloud, with such casual cruelty, shattered the last fragile hope she had been clinging to. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. She walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the forest beyond the pack house. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, and then she saw him, a figure on horseback, emerging from the tree line. Tall, commanding, draped in black and silver that caught the dying light like a blade. His face was partially shadowed, but even from this distance, Arielle could feel the weight of his presence, a power so absolute it made the air itself seem to bend. King Rowan Silvercrest. He rode toward the pack house with the certainty of a man who had never been denied anything. His guard flanked him, silent and deadly, but he needed no protection. He was the storm, he was the reckoning, and he was coming for her. The great hall blazed with firelight, every torch burning, every candle lit, casting shadows that danced like demons on the stone walls. The entire pack had assembled, dressed in their ceremonial finest, their faces eager and hungry. At the center of the raised platform stood Brenna Hollowfur, radiant in crimson and gold, a branding iron heating in the brazier beside her. Arielle was dragged forward by Jackson Reedwood, her wrists bound with rough rope, her body clad in nothing but a tattered gray shift that marked her as what they had always claimed she was, a servant, a thing to be used and discarded. The pack jeered as she was forced to her knees at Brenna's feet. Someone spat. Others laughed. Arielle kept her eyes on the floor, her body trembling, the locket hidden beneath the rags burning so hot she thought it might scar her skin. "Arielle Fenwick." Brenna's voice rang out, clear and triumphant. "You kneel before this pack accused of pretense, of clinging to a bloodline you have no right to claim. Tonight, you will renounce that pretense. You will speak the words of submission, and you will bear the mark of your true place." The Alpha stood beside Brenna, his expression carefully blank. Tamsin watched from the shadows, her smile small and satisfied. The pack pressed closer, their voices rising in anticipation. Brenna lifted the branding iron from the brazier. The metal glowed red-hot, the mark clearly visible, a broken wolf, the symbol of permanent servitude. "Speak the words," Brenna commanded. "Renounce your claim." Arielle's lips moved, but no sound came out. She could not do it. Even now. Even here. Something inside her refused to break completely. Brenna's smile sharpened. Then I will mark you silent. She raised the iron. The hall doors exploded open. The sound was like thunder, like the world itself splitting apart. Every head turned. Every voice fell silent. The firelight flickered wildly, casting the figure in the doorway in stark, terrible relief. King Rowan Silvercrest stood at the threshold, and the air itself seemed to bow before him. He was taller than any man Arielle had ever seen, his shoulders broad beneath a cloak of black and silver that moved like liquid shadow. His face was carved from stone and fury, his eyes pale silver, inhuman. Ancient swept across the hall with a gaze that made grown warriors flinch. Power radiated from him in waves so strong Arielle felt it in her bones, in her blood, in the marrow of her soul. He did not speak. He did not need to. The pack dropped to their knees as one, their heads bowed, their bodies trembling. Even the Alpha collapsed, his face white with terror. Only Brenna remained standing, frozen, the branding iron still raised in her hand. Rowan moved forward, his steps deliberate and unhurried. The crowd parted before him like water before a blade. He passed the Alpha without a glance. Past Tamsin, past Brenna, whose hand had begun to shake. He stopped in front of Arielle. She looked up, her vision blurred with tears, and met his eyes. Silver, endless, burning with something she could not name. And then, in a movement that shattered every expectation, every rule, every certainty the pack had ever known, King Rowan Silvercrest knelt. He knelt before her, this broken servant girl in rags, and took her bound hands in his. His touch was warm, steady, impossibly gentle. Arielle Fenwick. His voice was low, resonant, a sound that seemed to echo through her very soul. I am King Rowan Silvercrest. I have searched for you across 1,000 miles in 10 long years. I have come for my queen. The hall held its breath. The world held its breath. Will you take my hand? Arielle stared at him, her mind unable to process what was happening. This had to be a dream, a hallucination, a cruel trick. But his hand was real, warm, waiting, and the locket against her chest pulsed once, fierce and certain, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. Yes, she whispered. The word barely made a sound, but it was enough. Rowan's expression shifted, something fierce and victorious and tender all at once. He stood, pulling her to her feet, and turned to face the pack. She is mine. The Alpha found his voice first, though it came out strangled and desperate. Your Majesty, there has been a misunderstanding. This girl is... Silence. The single word from Rowan's lips carried such absolute authority that the Alpha's mouth snapped shut mid-sentence. The king did not shout. He did not need to. His power filled the hall like a living thing, pressing down on every soul present until even breathing felt like an act of defiance. Rowan cut the ropes binding Arielle's wrists with a blade that appeared in his hand as if summoned from shadow. He removed his cloak and draped it across her shoulders, the heavy fabric swallowing her small frame, warm and smelling of cedar and winter storms. Can you walk? His voice, when directed at her, lost its edge. It became something softer, though no less commanding. Arielle nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Her legs trembled as she stood, but Rowan's hand remained steady at her elbow, anchoring her. He turned toward the platform where Brenna still stood frozen, the branding iron now hanging uselessly at her side. You will answer for what you attempted here tonight, but not yet. His gaze swept to the Alpha. Summon your council. I will return within the hour, and you will provide me with an accounting of every cruelty, every injustice, and every lie that has been perpetrated against Arielle Fenwick. Your Majesty, please, if you would just allow me to explain. 1 hour. Rowan's eyes flashed silver, and the temperature in the hall dropped 10 degrees. Do not make me repeat myself. He guided Arielle toward the doors, the crowd scrambling to clear a path. She felt their stares burning into her back. Shock, confusion, rage, fear, but none of it mattered. None of it could touch her, not with the king's hand at her back. They climbed the stairs to the guest quarters in silence. Rowan's guard stood at attention outside the door, their expressions carefully neutral, though Arielle caught the brief flash of relief in their eyes when they saw her. Inside, the chambers were simple but warm. A fire crackled in the hearth. Wine and food had been laid out on a table near the window. Rowan closed the door and locked it with a finality that made Arielle's knees nearly buckle. Sit. He guided her to a chair near the fire. "You are safe now. I give you my word." She sank into the chair, her body finally registering the weight of what had just happened. Her hands shook. Her breath came in shallow gasps. "I do not understand. Why, how did you—" "We have time for explanations." Rowan knelt before her again, bringing himself to her eye level. His expression was gentler now, almost tender. "But first, you need to breathe. You are safe, Arielle. They cannot touch you anymore." Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. She tried to speak, but the words dissolved into sobs that racked her entire body. Rowan did not move. He simply stayed there, kneeling, his presence solid and unshakable, until the storm passed. When she finally quieted, he handed her a cloth. "Better?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet." His jaw tightened. "I should have found you sooner." Before she could ask what he meant, a sharp knock sounded at the door. One of Rowan's guards entered, his face grim. "Your Majesty, the council is assembled." Rowan stood, his expression shifting back to cold authority. He looked down at Arielle. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. I will return shortly." "What are you going to do?" His smile was sharp enough to cut. "I am going to have a conversation with your alpha about the consequences of abusing my mate." He left before she could process those words. "My mate." The door closed behind him, and Arielle sat frozen in the chair, her mind spinning. In the great hall, the pack council had assembled on the platform, their faces pale and terrified. The alpha stood at the center, flanked by Tamsin and Brenna, who looked like she might be sick. The rest of the pack pressed against the walls, too afraid to leave, too curious to look away. Rowan descended the stairs with the deliberate pace of an executioner. "Alpha Aldrich Hollofer." His voice carried to every corner of the hall. "You stand accused of crimes against a member of royal Lycan blood. You will now account for your actions." The alpha's face went gray. "Royal blood. That is impossible. She is my mate. She carries the bloodline of the Silver Ridge Pack, which was bound to my family by treaty and blood oath 3 generations ago." Rowan's eyes blazed. "A treaty your predecessor honored. A treaty you have violated through negligence, cruelty, and greed." Tamsin stepped forward, her voice smooth despite the fear in her eyes. "Your Majesty, surely there has been a mistake." "The only mistake," Rowan interrupted, "was allowing this pack to operate without oversight for so long." He turned his attention to Brenna. "And you would have branded her, marked her as property. My queen." Brenna dropped to her knees. "I did not know. Ignorance is not innocence." Rowan's voice was ice. "You saw a girl alone and defenseless, and you chose cruelty. That choice will cost you." Rowan returned to the chambers an hour later, his expression still dark with controlled fury. Arielle had been pacing, unable to sit still, the locket clutched in her hand. She spun when the door opened, her heart hammering. "Is it done? For now." He closed the door and leaned against it, some of the tension bleeding from his shoulders. "The Alpha has been stripped of his authority pending a full investigation. Brenna and her accomplices are confined to quarters under guard. The pack is adjusting to their new reality." Arielle sank back into the chair. "I still do not understand. You said I was your mate. You said I carried royal blood. How is any of this possible?" Rowan moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. "I have been searching for you for 10 years, Arielle. Since the day I first caught your scent on the wind, faint, distant, but unmistakable, the scent of my mate." He turned to look at her, his silver eyes intense. "But every time I tried to follow it, the trail would vanish, as if someone or something was deliberately hiding you from me." "A curse," Arielle whispered, understanding dawning. "Dark magic." "Yes. It was not until my scouts discovered the source, a talisman hidden in your father's effects, placed there after his death, that I finally understood. Someone in this pack wanted you hidden, wanted your bloodline suppressed." His jaw tightened. "They murdered your father to keep the secret, and they have kept you in chains ever since." Arielle's hand went to the locket around her neck. I found this in the old chapel. It has your family name. That belonged to your grandmother. She was my grandfather's sister, married into the Silver Ridge Pack to seal the alliance." Rowan crossed to her, kneeling once more so they were eye level. "You are not some forgotten servant, Arielle. You are the last of the Silver Ridge bloodline. You are royalty, and you are mine." The mate bond thrummed between them. a living current that grew stronger with every passing moment. Arielle felt it in her chest, in her blood, pulling her toward him with a force she could not resist and did not want to. "I have never shifted," she said quietly. "They always said I was broken, that my wolf was dead." "Your wolf is not dead." Rowan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized had fallen. "She was sleeping, waiting, for me." His touch ignited something deep inside her, something that had been dormant her entire life. Heat flooded through her veins, sudden and overwhelming. The locket against her chest blazed with light. Arielle gasped, her body arching, every nerve ending on fire. "Rowan, let it happen." His voice was steady, commanding, but gentle. "I am here. You are safe." The transformation hit her like lightning. Her bones shifted, reformed, her body reshaping itself with a power she had never imagined. But there was no pain, only release, only rightness, only the feeling of finally becoming what she was always meant to be. When the light faded, Arielle stood on 4 legs, her vision sharper, her senses overwhelming. She looked down at herself and froze. Her fur was pure silver, luminescent in the firelight, marked with intricate patterns that glowed like moonlight on water. She was massive, larger than any wolf she had ever seen, her presence filling the room with raw power. Rowan shifted beside her, a wolf of black and silver, enormous and regal, and touched his muzzle to hers. The bond between them snapped fully into place, complete and unbreakable, and Arielle felt his emotions as clearly as her own. Pride, wonder, love, possession. "My queen," his voice echoed in her mind, the intimacy of it staggering. Finally, they shifted back together, the magic flowing easily now. Arielle found herself in Rowan's arms, her body still trembling from the transformation. He held her close, his hand tangled in her hair, his forehead pressed to hers. "You are magnificent," he murmured, "exactly as I knew you would be." Arielle looked up at him, this king who had crossed the world to find her, who had knelt before her when she had nothing. "I do not know how to be a queen. You have survived years of cruelty with your spirit intact. You have endured what would have broken anyone else." His hand tightened in her hair. "You already are a queen, Arielle. Now you simply need to let the world see it." She kissed him then, fierce and desperate and certain, accepting the bond, accepting her fate, accepting him. And when they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she saw her future reflected in his silver eyes. Tomorrow, they would face the pack together. Tomorrow, she would stand as queen. But tonight, she was simply Arielle, and she was finally, impossibly, home. Dawn broke over the Hollowfur pack house with a silence that felt like the aftermath of a storm. Word had spread through the night, whispered in terror, passed from room to room, that the servant girl had transformed, that she was not broken, that she was a silver wolf, a bloodline so rare it was spoken of only in legends, that she was the Lycan queen. By the time the sun fully rose, every member of the pack had assembled in the great hall. But this time, there was no celebration, no anticipation, only fear so thick it choked the air. Arielle stood in the king's chambers, dressed in robes of silver and white that Rowan's guard had brought for her. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her hair had been braided with moonstone beads. Her posture was straight, her eyes clear. She looked like someone who had never scrubbed kennel floors or eaten scraps from the kitchen. She looked like a queen. "Are you ready?" Rowan stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. She met his eyes in the reflection. Yes. They descended the stairs together, side by side, equals in power and presence. The great hall fell into absolute silence when they entered. Every head bowed, every knee bent. Even those who had laughed at her, spat at her, cursed her. They all knelt now, trembling. Arielle walked to the platform where she had nearly been branded just hours before. The brazier still sat there, cold now, the iron discarded on the floor. She looked out at the sea of bowed heads and felt the weight of her power settle over her like a crown. "Rise," she commanded, her voice carrying with an authority she had never known she possessed. They obeyed, but none of them met her eyes. "You all stood here last night," Arielle continued, her tone calm but edged with steel. "You watched. You cheered. You celebrated what you believed would be my destruction." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You believed I was nothing, that I deserved nothing, that I could be broken and discarded without consequence. Brenna stood near the front, her face pale, her ceremonial robes now looking like a costume. Jackson was beside her, his massive frame somehow diminished. Tamsin lurked in the shadows, her calculating eyes for once showing genuine fear. "Brenna Hollowfur." Arielle's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Step forward." Brenna hesitated, then moved to the base of the platform, her movements stiff with terror. "You sought to brand me, to mark me as property, to strip me of dignity and identity." Arielle descended one step, bringing herself closer. "I could do the same to you. I could make you suffer as you made me suffer. But I am not you." Hope flickered in Brenna's eyes for just a moment. "You are hereby stripped of your rank, your title, and your claim to this pack. You will leave Hollowfur territory by sunset and never return. This is my mercy." Brenna's face crumbled, but she said nothing. She simply bowed her head and stepped back. Jackson Reedwood, Tamsin Firewood. They came forward together, both trying and failing to hide their fear. "The same judgment applies to you. You are banished. You have until sunset." They did not argue. They could not. The power radiating from Arielle made defiance impossible. Finally, Arielle turned to the Alpha. Aldrich stood at the edge of the platform, no longer wearing his ceremonial robes, his face hollow and aged. He looked like a man who had lost everything. She walked to him slowly, holding his gaze. For a moment, she saw the man who had turned away from her pleas, who had called her a problem solved, who had allowed her father's death to go unanswered. "You told me I was a burden," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "That I was a mistake you wished you had corrected years ago." He flinched but said nothing. "You were right about one thing." Arielle stepped past him, moving toward the doors where Rowan waited. "I was always meant for something greater than this place." She took Rowan's offered hand, their fingers intertwining, and together they walked out of the great hall. The pack parted before them like a tide, their heads bowed, their silence absolute. Behind her, Arielle left the wreckage of her old life, the servitude, the abuse, the chains. Ahead of her stretched a destiny she had never imagined but now claimed as her own. She was Arielle Fenwick, Lycan Queen, maid of King Rowan Silvercrest, and she was finally, gloriously free. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.